The ego is the system that runs your sense of self. It is made out of thought patterns, emotions, and behavioral loops, and the stories that try to hold it all together. Left unchecked, it creates endless existential searching, chronic disconnection, and the persistent sense that something is wrong. The goal of my videos is clarity, to see your identity and its contradictions for what they are, named precisely, to finally understand what it is that we're all running away from. Humans are very arrogant creatures, and since you are human as well, I assume you are arrogant as well. Because we pretend to know stuff we don't actually know. We don't notice that we make subtle assumptions all the time about other people and what they think of us and what we are supposed to do or what our true intentions are. And these subtle assumptions, what they do is they give us a sense of security. We pretend to know what it's actually like to be in this environment. In this way, it makes things predictable. The problem is that you might predict something wrongly, but you believe that you accurately predicted it just because you view the world through a certain, let's say, paranoid lens. For example, you might be insecure that you think you are not as smart as other people in social situations. For example, you feel socially awkward. If that's the case, then somebody's going to make a silly joke at like a word you used, and instead of thinking it is funny because he was doing a creative wordplay, you feel personally attacked. You feel that your intelligence is attacked. And now your suspicions that people are secretly judging you because, you don't know how to articulate yourself well gets reaffirmed. Now you're going to be even more paranoid in the future because now you just got validated in, your own empirical evidence when the entire process was an entire, illusion. This happens on every aspect of reality. You think you're predicting something, but what you're then actually seeing is your own projection. That's the idea of, a self-fulfilling prophecy. By fearing that this might come true, you make it true. Now, noticing that this is how you think and then actively working against it is very counterintuitive for most human beings. They don't like doing this at all because it is a destabilizing experience for the intellect. We love to feel like we know stuff. It is how we get our sense of validation, how we put ourselves in social hierarchies. There are a lot of different type of hierarchies depending on where you're at. In your job or career, there is a certain authority hierarchy. And if you are pretending to know more than your boss, for example, then your boss might feel threatened in their own identity and therefore come hard down to you or start to dislike you or treat you unfavorably. There are also hierarchies in spiritual communities where you are supposed to signal to people that you have some divine knowledge or deep insight about the nature of reality and existence. This already makes it so that it's difficult to talk about these more profound topics within the spiritual community because everybody claims to have their own true knowledge. And oftentimes people are trying to signal this true knowledge to other people. And this is where in the spiritual community, people play subtle ego games all the time that sometimes are not even that subtle at all. And there are many people who are completely blinded to how egoic they're actually acting, how self-obsessed they're being, how much they're projecting. And they all convince themselves that it's everybody else that is projecting and everybody else who is arrogant and doesn't really know the truth. And you get into a very uncomfortable spot here. And then on the philosophers, people have strong allegiance to their own metaphysical claim. If you are a materialist, everything that goes against materialism cannot even be considered into your own framework. It is not something that your mind architecture allows to look honestly. You're already dismissing it when you understand that somebody is saying something that sounds a bit too mystical to you. And on the other side, on the fundamentalist Christians, they reject everything that sounds too scientific. And if it implies an age of the planet that is millions or billions of years old, it directly contradicts with the Bible. So you cannot possibly engage with an idea like this. But there might also be a very wise thing to learn from certain sections of the Bible where there's a genuine wisdom to be found. more than just fictional stories, but actual truthful knowledge about, what it is to act virtuous, or how to interact with people more kindly, or some other wisdom deep buried underneath. But if you already know that the Bible is full of shit and God doesn't exist, so why even listen to any new information that could come from there? You already know better, don't you? This is how the ego plays a hide and seek game all the time, where it tries to hide from everything that goes counter to its own identity structure. But the moment it sees something that it can attack in order to feel superior, it will love to do so. But then it only wants to reinforce its own identity. Basically, you're just arguing about being seen for how you are. And if you want to convince the other person, it's also important to you that other people become more like you. This state of being is stressful, it's not comfortable, and it causes a ton of neurosis and discomfort. If you understand that deconstructing this rigid architecture is what leads to actual psychological liberation and true understanding of the self and phenomenology, and you want to dive deeper into your own practice and understanding of your mind and your sense of meaning and purpose of what is going on in this life, then check out my Ego Architecture Audit in the PDF below. It's a one-on-one protocol where I can help you directly to process these ontological and existential topics. It is very easy to fall into a trap to believe that you know more than you know, and I would say that true spirituality is the consistent act of doubting your own sense of knowledge, to always remain epistemically humble of everything that you actually cannot be certain about. Now, the issue that comes up when you do this for long enough is that either you're going to actually become very arrogant because you have a blind spot you're not seeing, which is kind of part of the process. That's why it's very important to have like people around you that call you out from your bullshit or challenge you. But it might also be the case that you generally find solid certainty, like you can be certain about your own direct contact with experience, or your direct contact with your self-knowledge to know how you function. And you can pretty much know when you have found this knowledge, when you are pretty certain and at the same time are not attached to the certainty. When you notice that you can even question the certainty, but it doesn't produce any meaningful effects in your nervous system. That means that you are landing on a place that feels solid to you, but your identity is not actually attached to it. That means that you could drop it in the next moment and it wouldn't actually matter to you much. Imagine how difficult it is for somebody who has been a lifelong Christian, for example, like for 20, 30 years, went to church, prayed to God, maybe hours per week, and then suddenly something happens and they lose their belief in God. The ontological shock is so extreme because you thought you knew, and now it seems like your entire life is a lie. This realization that your entire life is a lie is extremely beneficial. It is a very positive thing, and it's a part of waking up to your own mental programming. You can call it social programming, which it always relates to social programming too, because people have basically told you that your value depends on you being certain or proving that you're right about something. And there's a part of it that is, of course, also functional or practical because you want to be able to enact change in the world. But your true worth doesn't depend on what you know, because what you know is in reality just what you are. Your identity is self-defined. You exist as this specific configuration, and this includes all your psychological knowledge. It's only when you start to compare to other people how much you know or how much are you supposed to know that things become weird and icky, because now the ego just activates and it doesn't actually care about the grounding knowledge anymore, and it cares about the hierarchy games again. So the less you know, the closer you come to actual freedom. Now, just to say stop knowing stuff doesn't really work if you are attached to this way of knowing. If you have built a lot of language in order to feel certain in your own ideas, and now you cling to that language, you need to decouple yourself from your own epistemology, which is the question of how do we know things in the first place. And this relates strongly to how we are relating to language and how attached we are to language itself. And in this video, I go deeper into this process of deconstruction of our own sense of language and how we are using it to create a sense of purpose or meaning or grand theory of reality that you can only find if you deconstruct the entire process itself.